time for a little Inside the Sixers as they are back in action tonight, right here on 97.3 ESPN. You'll hear the matchup with the Bulls. Tom McGinnis on the call. Paul Hudrick is our Sixers insider for 97.3ESPN.com. And, of course, he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. There he is, as he joins us now on the Sports Bash as we have a Friday edition getting ready for the game tonight. And we'll start with this. We haven't seen Joel and Ben play together for about, a week or so. Are both guys scheduled, Paul, to be back in the lineup tonight?
Well, Ben Simmons is probable, so that's a good start. But I've also learned that with this basketball team, I'm not going to believe it until I see a guy is actually on the floor. So, so he's probable for now. So hopefully we get our look at both of those guys on the court at the same time. Like you said, Mike, Ben missed the last game, Joel the game before that. So to see them both at home on a Friday night against the Bulls, it should be a fun time. Yeah,
and I know they played national TV the other night. That got ugly the way that thing ended. They'll be back on there tonight. But the Nets all of a sudden are starting to make some noise, and you wonder if the Sixers are kind of hearing that noise at all.
My guess would be no, especially with the way Doc Rivers is. Doc Rivers is and he's been asked it as soon as basically the James Harden trade happened, he had been asked it a ton. It's, do you think your team stacks up to the Nets in some variation or another? He's been asked, and he said, I don't care. I want my team to be good. I want us to do what we do well. I want us to worry about ourselves. And I think that's the right mentality. I think to kind of look ahead and see, the Nets beat the Lakers, so now that maybe the Nets are really good. It's like it doesn't really do you any good. And it's also context. I mean, yes, you can't take anything away from the Nets. They didn't have Durant, and they beat the Lakers. Lakers didn't have AD. So, I mean, you're not even really seeing the full, complement of players. They also didn't have Schroeder, I believe. So, I mean, it's an impressive win. It's on the road, and the Nets have done a really great job on the road. They beat the Suns. They came back, down Kyrie and Durant. They were down 24 and came back and won. It's an impressive win, but at the same time, I don't think you could take too much stock into games in February. We'll see much more when those teams are at full strength and they're playing each other.
I want to get your thoughts on Matisse Thybulle right now because he's such a unique option for this team, and I really do believe he could be a weapon defensively. It's crazy, and hey, with the zone as well, maybe that's something we see down the road, but there is another side to it, and the offensive woes is a problem. So I just want to see how you feel about Matisse Thybulle right now in this crazy defensive play that he has, but the limitations as well.
Yeah, bro, it's tough, especially with their bench struggling so much for offense. They could really use offense. They could really use a player that could hit a shot or take someone off the dribble, and they just haven't gotten that at all. So, but Matisse has just been so excellent defensively. It's hard to not play him. It's hard to not have him be part of that rotation because you can't have Ben Simmons out there 48 minutes a game guarding the best players in the league. You need to give him a break. And when you have Matisse Thybulle on the floor, you can do that. You saw how great the Kings game to me is the biggest measure of how great and how big of a piece he can be for this team when, Ben Simmons even struggled guarding De'Aaron Fox. And then you throw Matisse Thybulle on him. Matisse Thybulle really shut him down in that fourth quarter. It was unbelievable to the point where Doc Rivers then rides Matisse Thybulle all the way to the finish, closes the game out with him. So it's going to be Doc's going to have to keep doing that kind of juggling act of, all right, when we need offense, we go to whatever. At the end of games, it's the Seth Curry in for offense, Matisse in for defense. He's going to have to keep juggling that probably throughout the season because, Matisse's shot is just really inconsistent. You see, one thing with a guy like Danny Green, as much as his shot runs hot and cold, he's so good at spacing and understanding floor spots. And Matisse just kind of isn't there yet offensively. Doesn't really quite know, 100% where to be on the floor and how to provide optimal spacing. But he's going to be a big part of this team. I think there's no question about it. What he can do defensively, it's incredible. To me, he's one of the better wing defenders in the NBA going right now. But his offense it's like pretty much nothing. Yeah. So it's just Doc's really going to have to kind of measure that out, kind of do that juggling act all season, I think.
Now that's an interesting couple. You just brought up two really good points in it, and it really indicates something that I don't know that people watch the game with that kind of view is Danny Green doesn't excite you. He's almost like Torrey Smith as a wide receiver. He doesn't excite you, but his speed was enough to worry people that they had to bring a safety, and it opened up like some middle ground for Zach Ertz, and voila, Zach Ertz has 160, has a huge year. Danny Green might not do a lot, but he's smart enough to know, like, if I just take one more step this way, that opens up things more. That floor spacing that you just talked about, I don't think that is brought up enough in terms of being a smart basketball player, and that is sometimes why teams get into problems, is because their players don't have, even if they're not great at doing something, they don't have the basketball IQ to kind of just do it, even though you're not great at something.
Right. And no one's going to argue that Josh Richardson is a better basketball player than Danny Green. He flat out is. When you look at the overall skill set, especially at this point in their careers, Josh Richardson's a better basketball player. But it's those little nuances that Danny Green does that I think have helped Joel Embiid. And
not a savvy basketball player.
What's that?
Not savvy.
No, yeah, and it's veteran too. I mean, look at the teams Danny Green has been on and the players he's been around, the coaches he's learned under. I mean, his career is ridiculous. And I think that's a big part of it too, is just learning how to play with kind of star players and big talent. And it's not just the offensive end, it's the defensive end. Listen, Danny Green, he's 33 years old now. He's not the same guy. He doesn't have the same legs he might have had like Matisse Thybulle does right now. But a lot of the little things he does, you can see, and you're like, wow, like that's something that maybe a guy like a Josh Richardson wouldn't have done. And again, Josh Richardson, better flat out defender, longer, better legs, better beating guys to the spot, but just little things Danny Green does that help teams win. Like that term glue guy, like that's what Danny Green is. He is a glue guy, and he helps basketball. It's not a coincidence that he's helped teams win championships, because I think he is that kind of guy that just does those little things that maybe don't always go seen.
The other night when Joel Embiid wasn't available, they elected to go with Mike Scott at the 5. And is there much into that? Is that just like hey, we want to keep Dwight Howard on the bench? Like, I'm trying to figure out, what is Mike Scott's role? Obviously, it's been a disappointing last couple of years for him, but you have Dwight as an option, Ben as an option at the 5. Is Mike Scott even a real possibility, if need be, ever there, if they want to go small, or is that just a product of the situation?
So I think on the surface, I think it had a lot more to do with Ben Simmons than it did with Mike Scott. I think the idea behind Doc Rivers doing that was so Ben Simmons could do, I mean, I'm sure Doc didn't go into it thinking Ben Simmons was going to score 42 points, but the idea was to open up the floor for Ben and allow him to do different things and have centers guarding him, which you see did not work out, great for Utah, because Ben really went off in that regard. And I also think when you look at how good Ben was in that game, a lot of that, again, running those DHOs, pick and rolls where he's really, setting great screens and rolling to the basket hard, and it's giving them opportunities. I think what you're seeing there too is Doc has really wanted to see, what does this look like when Ben Simmons is at the 5? And I think part of that is, hey, listen, maybe we don't trade for a stretch 5, but if we get into a pinch in the playoffs and we have to go small, maybe we throw Ben Simmons at the 5, and he has, the other team has a hard time containing him, and you give them options. A center can't just pop out and shoot threes because Ben Simmons is right there. Or on the other end, then they have to deal with Ben Simmons screening and rolling to the basket and having him finish at the rim. So I think that start with Mike Scott said much more about how Doc views Ben Simmons and how he kind of views his role and expanding into that stretch 5 and what that could look like down the road. As for Mike Scott, I mean, I think he kind of is what he is. I think he's a backup 4. I do think, in some lineups, I do think Doc might look at him as maybe a 5 in a pinch. If a particular more mobile center is really giving Dwight problems, maybe he goes to Mike Scott. But again, I think it says way more about how Doc views Ben Simmons than it does Mike Scott.
Yeah, that's Scott was such a popular guy. I've seen people like, I'm done. I'm done with Scott. I don't know. Is he a playoff rotation guy?
He was 2 years ago. I thought he was really good for them in that playoff run. And then obviously last year he had a tough year. This year he can't get healthy this year. He hurt the one knee. Then, he comes back. He plays pretty well in that game against the Heat, and then he hurts the other knee. And then he's out again. So I just think this year he just hasn't gotten a chance to really, spread his wings and really play and get his legs under him. So can he be a rotational player? I mean, he was 2 years ago. He did it. Can he be that guy again? I don't know. We still got a long ways to go in this season. I think now he's going to get his opportunities because now that he's healthy, Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons really got, I think, overextended with him out, playing that 4. So I think Mike being back is going to help those guys maybe, use their minutes a little bit better and maybe, help them save a little energy. And it's going to be up to Mike. If Mike can find a little bit of that magic he had 2 years ago and make some shots, play tough, commit good, hard fouls, professional fouls, and be kind of that veteran presence in that regard, maybe. But, as of now, he hasn't proven it, but he's got a lot of time to try to.
All right. A lot of discussion when Korkmaz is on and he's off. The other night you saw some Isaiah Joe. Is there an opportunity? Is Doc's message that, hey, if you're not going to be on, you're not going to be on the floor, and that, Joe, if you could go out there and show me. So is there some sort of – and I guess kind of the same question with Scott. Like, are one of those guys going to have to be in a playoff rotation? Is Korkmaz a guy they look at in that? I felt that whole dynamic was interesting the other night against Houston.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit surprised because he actually went to Isaiah Joe in Utah too, if you recall, in the fourth quarter when Korkmaz was really struggling.
Right. Yep.
He went to Joe. So I think, I don't think any of those guys has anything to worry about long term because I don't think Doc Rivers is going to count on a 21-year-old rookie to give him wing bench minutes, in the playoffs, or I don't think that's the case. And Doc has been pretty high on Korkmaz all along. If I'm being honest, if the trade deadline is where I would be looking to upgrade from a guy like Korkmaz, or if you get a point guard, then you move Shake Milton to Korkmaz's role off the ball. It's just, and that's what it is with Korkmaz, Mike. He's just so hot and cold. And when he gets hot, he can literally change games with his shooting because he just gets that ridiculously hot. But his defense, it's improved, but he's still a liability on that end. And I just don't know, we saw last year against the Celtics, he was unplayable. And I don't know what's different from last year that's going to make him playable in the playoffs. Like I said, though, Doc Rivers likes him. So I think he's going to get an opportunity to try to prove himself, to try to earn that role. But I don't think it's set in stone. And I do think there's going to be opportunities for other guys to maybe step up if he continues to not hit shots.
All right, Paul Hudrick, Inside the Sixers from 97.3 ESPN.com, host of the Coming In for a Landing podcast. They got the Bulls tonight, and, it's a Bulls team that's not great. And, you had that game on Wednesday after that road trip. Is this a game tonight that you would like to see some sort of statement, I know that, I think the three of us are all pretty level-headed when it comes to, regular season. I don't care how the games go, but is this the kind of game that you would like to see that dominating performance?
Yeah, especially against the guy. To me, I would like to see it on the defensive end because they haven't had that kind of game where the Houston game was very funky, where Houston hit a bunch of threes early, then Doc went to that zone, and then they got a big lead, and then it seemed like they took their foot. It was just a weird game, that Rockets game. So I would like to see a dominant defensive performance. I would like to see, Ben Simmons, follow Zach LaVine and shut him down. Not shut him down because, he's going to get his probably for the most part, but, slow him down a little bit. And that's where I would really like to see the Sixers really make their thumbprint on the game and really have a dominant defensive effort. I think that would be good. I think it would just be good for the team's psyche. Like you said, Mike, because they haven't really had that game in a while. The Houston game was ugly. They lose 3 in a row on the road trip. I would like to see that game where they just dominate defensively, and I would like to see Ben Simmons have a big night against Zach LaVine.
That's the thing. Because if Joel and Ben both play, it's almost like you want to see those two guys because they played well without one another. You don't want this whole conversation of, now they're back together and it looked a little clunky. I don't want to have to go through that again.
No, 100%. I am really interested to see how, Ben Simmons just dropped 42 points in his last game without Joel Embiid. So I'm very curious to see how that is going to look when Ben Simmons is back. How is he going to attack the same way? I'm sure Joel Embiid to some extent is going to encourage that because Joel Embiid has constantly encouraged Ben Simmons to be more aggressive and attack the basket. So I want to see how that all looks. I want to see how it looks when they're both kind of playing their best, which we saw at times on the road trip. And when that starting five was out there, I thought they competed really well. When those two were out there, I thought they were excellent, and they were the better team when those two were out there. So I would like to see, them against an inferior team really take it to them and really see what they can do together.
Embiid wasn't the strongest last performance, but he still had 31, 11, and 9. 1 assist shy of a triple-double. I want to get your thoughts on the passing. 9 assists. That's very impressive.
Absolutely. And, his back was clearly bothering him in that first half. You saw him on the bench kind of trying to stretch it out and get it loose. And I think that part of it was a byproduct of that. He wasn't feeling great. So he was, open for, more open to finding teammates. And on top of that, guys were hitting shots. They really shot really well in the first half, whether it was Curry, whether it was Green, whomever, they were all hitting shots. And that goes a long way too. And Embiid has touched on this before where he just feels better about the roster and that when he passes the ball out of a double team, the guy on the outside is going to make the shot. And we saw it in the first half against Houston. In general, I think they need to keep shooting threes. They need to keep shooting more threes. Not necessarily Embiid and Simmons, but the rest of the roster really needs to just fire whenever they get their opportunities. If they get a speck of daylight, those shots got to go up. They got to take more threes. But yeah, Embiid, it's amazing, bros, that was kind of a quote unquote down game for him. And those are the numbers he puts up. The other down game was the game against Sacramento where he was unbelievable down the stretch. So it just speaks to that this guy is having an MVP caliber season, and every facet of his game, he looks better than he has in the past. And that's saying a lot because this is a guy who's, about to playing his 4th All-Star game. So just his overall game has just been so great this year. And that's a big reason why they're winning games, and he's just been phenomenal.
7:30 tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis is on the call, Inside the Sixers. He's Paul Hudrick. Check out the podcast, Coming In for a Landing, and check out his writing at 97.3ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Hudrick, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Paul, we will talk to you on Monday, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Take care, guys.